our theatricals this evening. This is the 5th straight year that we have had this brilliant troupe of players. We are welcoming back our own Adam and Blanche McCune. It is true that Blanche got a degree elsewhere.
We love her anyway.
A somewhat lesser school. Have taken her to our heart as one of our own. They are performing yet another piece of the juvenilia. This is keeping with Bower, the very last piece of the juvenilia, as you know, that was in the 4th ballroom there, and it is always understood as the missing link between the raucous satire and parody of the juvenilia and the novels to come. If the ending seems not entirely satisfying, it's because it wasn't finished. And the cast will be happy to stay around and answer questions afterward.
Catharine, you shall catch your death sitting in that bower. It is always damp. I sat down in it to rest myself last May, and I have never been quite well since. I shall have it all torn down, I assure you.
No, now, you must not do that. You must be convinced how unhappy it would make me. My bower alone can restore me to myself.
That is ridiculous, child. All women nonsense. Solitude and reflection would have the same effect in your bedchamber. Why cannot you fancy your room a bower?
Had my room been built by my childhood friends, I suppose I should value it equally. For it is not merely the name of a bower which charms me.
I know you miss them. I often wish for your sake that our neighborhood were larger or that we mixed more with it.
Yes?
But then I recall that nearly every family in the neighborhood has a young man in it. And as I live in constant apprehension of your marrying imprudently,
Please, ma'am.
even my own cousin's family has a young man in it, and I have heard enough of him to alarm me.
Mr. Edward Stanley?
Yes. Only now that he is in Europe on the grand tour have I dared to invite his family to visit.
I know, ma'am. For the past 3 or 4 days, I've scarcely thought of anything. But they're coming. Miss Stanley and I will be constant companions, and there will be some consolation now that my friends are so far away.
Let us hope so. But what am I saying? That Stanley should be here any moment. Ah,
My dear Mrs. Percival.
Mrs. Stanley and Miss Camilla Stanley. Allow me to introduce my niece, Miss Catharine Percival.
Miss Percival, this is my husband, Mr. Stanley.
Honored to make your acquaintance. Ah,
I see a great improvements to your garden.
Oh, yes. Do let me show you.
Of course. I have just finished reading one of Miss Smith's novels. I suppose you've read them.
Oh, yes. I am quite delighted by them. They are the sweetest things in the world. Only Ethelyn is so long.
That is a very common objection, I believe. But for my part, if a book is well written, I always find it too short.
Oh, so do I. Only I get tired of it before it's finished.
I am very glad of a new companion. My dear friends, the daughters of our former parson, no longer live in Chetwynd. The neighbors we now have at the parsonage, the Dudleys, appear at more disadvantage in coming after them.
Oh, horrid wretches! I wonder how you can endure them. I remember I met Miss Dudley at Ronelay last spring, and she had the most frightful cap on that I haven't been able to bear any of them since.
The state of affairs in the political world is disastrous. is degenerating. For my part, I believe everything is going to rack and ruin, and all order is destroyed from the face of the world. I hear that the House of Commons sometimes does not break up until 5 in the morning.
Well, as a member of the House of Commons, I can assure you that not all of us have gone to rack and ruin just yet. After all, the kingdom has not been so flourishing or prosperous a state for ages.
I see the signs of the coming destruction of the nation every day. We shall all be at 6s and 7s soon enough, mark my words. But even if I were to grant some material prosperity, it has done nothing for human character. Depravity never was so general before. I only hope I may live to see the manners of the people in Queen Elizabeth's reign restored again.
Well, ma'am, I hope with the times you do not mean to restore Queen Elizabeth herself. It must be an everlasting blot on anyone's character to confine and execute a cousin who comes for assistance and protection, as Queen Elizabeth did to Mary Queen of Scots.
Queen Elizabeth lived to a good old age and was a very clever woman.
You never do hazard a remark on history that is not well-founded.
That is true, ma'am, but I do not consider either age or cleverness meritorious in her, and they are very far from making me wish for her return. If she were to come again with her same good constitution and same abilities, she might do as much mischief and last as long as she did before. What do you think of Queen Elizabeth, Miss Stanley? I hope you will not defend her.
Oh, I know nothing of politics, and I cannot bear to hear them mentioned.
Well, I suppose I'd better see how our man was handling the luggage.
He does seem to have a bit of a problem with unfamiliar stirs.
Can Miss Stanley really know so little of Queen Elizabeth that she does not recognize her reign as history rather than the politics of today?
This is the effect of modern education. Drawing and music, but no reading. But do not despair of Miss Stanley yet. Her temper is good by nature.
Oh, my dear Catharine, I have the most delightful news for you, but you shall guess what it is. We are all the happiest creatures in the world. Can you believe the Dudleys have invited us to a ball at their house? I never knew what a charming family they are. And what good sense was in the whole family. I declare I do quite dote upon all of them. A ball!
A ball? I shall be simply crawling with young men. What if there's an officer there?
Please, ma'am, the militia have not been nearby for months. You know how fond I am of dancing and how seldom I am able to enjoy it.
Very well, we shall accept.
And it happens just so fortunately too, for I expect a new captain from town tomorrow. Gold net. It'll be the most angelic thing. Everyone will be longing for a pattern. A ball!
You shall want a good night's sleep, I imagine.
Thank you, Emmy. A ball. What? Morning already? Oh, no. Not a toothache the day of the ball.
Yes, ma'am.
What remedies do you know for the toothache, Annie?
Oh, a very great many, ma'am. My brothers and sisters all got the toothache. Let me see what they have in the kitchen.
Please. Perhaps I can sleep it off. I will never sleep like this.
This is just the thing, ma'am, but be careful, it's still quite hot.
Thank you.
I know it's not very nice, but put it in your mouth as long as possible. Everyone, oil and beer.
Yes. It relieved the pain at first, but it has returned. What else do you suggest? I'm ready to try anything.
That is good, ma'am. My mother always said, if you believe in the remedy, the cure is certain. Please sit and open your mouth. What do you fear?
Today, not going to the ball.
And what do you hope for?
To dance, I suppose?
With a young gentleman?
Of course.
Now hold that hope and fear together in your mind and look into my eyes. Toothache,
I can still feel it.
Sorry, ma'am, it always worked with my brother.
What else do you remember?
Well, if there were hollows in your teeth, you could fill them with opium. But your teeth look pretty sound to me, ma'am. There is another cure. I can't really recommend it. It was my mother's favorite.
What was that?
A kick in the shins. To distract you, you know?
Do it.
Ma'am, I couldn't. Do it! I'm sorry, ma'am. So sorry.
It worked! Oh! My toothache is cured. It feels... Oh, I can feel the tooth again.
So sorry, ma'am.
What is the matter, child? Did I hear you shouting?
I have a violent toothache, ma'am, and I do not believe I can go to the ball.
You should take a decoction of fir wood and beer.
Granny brought me one already.
Well, we might fill your tooth with opium.
There is not a hollow in the tooth, ma'am, only an ache.
Very well, then I will give you a...
But the pain still returned.
I am sorry, my dear. Though I confess I grieve more for your toothache than for your disappointment over the ball. For I do not see how I could have prevented you from dancing with a young man. In your condition, it is impossible for you to leave the house.
Camilla, you cannot barge into other people's bedrooms.
Not go to the ball? After so looking forward to it and so much pleasure in the preparations? Oh, I wish there was no such thing as teeth in the world.
Well, after all, every day somebody suffers much greater misfortunes than the loss of a ball. Perhaps one day I will look back with wonder or even envy that today I knew no greater vexation.
I am glad to see that some girls your age are not completely devoid of philosophy.
To be sure, I've never heard anything so shocking in my life.
Perhaps we should all remain at home with you.
What?
Please, Stanley, sooner than have anybody remain at home with me, I would go myself. You're too kind. Camilla, it's time to depart. Oh! Affectionately yours, Catharine. I suppose it is true that sorrows are lightened by communication. It was such a relief to write of my toothache. In fact,
Ma'am?
my toothache is much relieved. Have the others left for the ball already?
Yes, ma'am, in Mr. Stanley's carriage.
Then I can follow in my aunt's carriage. Quick, order be brought round.
Of course, ma'am.
Is that the carriage already?
Lord, ma'am, here is a young man coming a chaise for. And I cannot for the life of me conceive of who it is. But he is the handsomest young man you would ever wish to see. I was almost ashamed of being seen in my apron. He asked whether the family were at home, so I said they had all gone out but you, ma'am, for I would not deny you. I'm sure you would like to see him.
What can all this mean? And who can he possibly be? Did you never see him before? Did he not tell you his name?
No, he never said anything of the sort. So then I asked him to walk into the parlor agreeable.
He is. He certainly has made a great impression on you, Annie. But where can he be from? And what can he be doing here?
Well, I was just going to tell you, ma'am. He asked if you were at leisure to see anybody, and I would bet anything he has come to ask you to dance with him tonight.
I only hope that might be the case. And as it is likely, I will have no other partner as I come late. But what in the name of wonder can he have to say to me? Perhaps he has come to rob the house. He comes in style at least, and it will be some consolation for our losses to be robbed by a gentleman in a chaise and four. What livery does he have?
Why, that is the best thing about him, ma'am, for he came with not a single servant, and in hack horses. Oh, but he is as handsome as a prince for all that, and has quite the look of one. I beg you, ma'am, do go down and see him.
I suppose I must, yet it is very odd. What can he have to say to me?
I trust that the awkwardness of first introductions will be improved by the circumstances. You, of course, my dear, need no introduction. Miss Percival, I know you from description. And you, of course, will be wondering, how did you get here from France so quickly? Well, I'll tell you. A most melancholy affair has called me back to England, and I couldn't leave again without first paying my respects. Sorry. But tell me, how are Mr. and Mrs. Stanley? And and you seem dressed for a ball. Where's the rest of your party?
Perhaps, sir, you may be acquainted with Mr. and Mrs. Stanley, and your business may be with them.
Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Stanley, yes, distant relations. Only my own mother and father.
Gracious heavens! Are you Mr. Edward Stanley, then? I beg 1,000 pardons, but upon recollection, I really do not know what for, as you never told me your name.
Well, I made you that lovely speech all about introducing myself. At least, I thought it was a good speech for me.
Certainly, the speech had great merit. I thought so at the time, but as you did not mention your name in it, as an introductory speech, it might have been better.
So where are you going to dressed so smart?
On to dance at a neighbor's.
Ah, and suppose I were to accompany you to this dance, and suppose then I were to dance with you, perhaps.
I shall be highly honored, and I can answer for your being extremely welcome to the family who give the ball.
Oh, hang all that. They're not going to throw me out of the house.
I think the best plan would be to send for my aunt before we enter the room, especially as you're a perfect stranger and must be introduced to Mr. and Mrs. Dudley.
Nonsense. Our arriving together will be a perfect excuse to throw aside such prudish ridiculousness. We'll be the talk of the whole country.
To me, that will be a very powerful inducement, but I scarcely know my aunt will consider it such. Women at her time of life have such odd notions of propriety, you know.
Well, that's exactly the sort of thing you ought to bring.
You are very ridiculous. Divert me too much to convince me.
Well, at least you find me agreeable then. Shall we go?
father seemed to enjoy the dance.
I dare say he enjoyed it, although it was shocking the way he tugged me about.
Well, I left poor Catherine a little better, thank heaven. Although I hope that she was able to amuse herself with a book. For otherwise she must have been very dull, poor thing. She is probably in bed by this time, which, while she is so poorly, is the best place for her, you know, Ned.
Camilla! Father!
Catherine! What is the meaning of you barging in here with an uninvited stranger without asking to meet our hostess first? Did you come in the same carriage with him? Without a chaperone?
I am sorry, ma'am, but he is my cousin, you know.
He is a young man. And what are you doing here when you are ill?
I felt better.
Mrs. Dudley, allow me to introduce my son, Mr. Edward Stanley. He has come unexpectedly from abroad and has accompanied his cousin to the dance.
So terribly honored to meet your acquaintance, ma'am.
Yes. Are your social calls always so abrupt?
Oh, well, you know, I sometimes do not myself know where I'll be in a day or in an hour, so it's often hard for other people to know either. In this case, I heard such wonderful things about your festivities, I couldn't miss it for the world.
Quite.
Let's meet your mother. Now,
Isn't this the most delightful thing you could have ever imagined? But it is always so. I have never been to a ball when something or other unexpectedly happens that is quite charming.
A ball seems an eventful thing for you.
Oh, yes, it is. But only think of my brother Edward's returning so suddenly to England, and the circumstances that brought him here.
What was it, pray, that occasioned your brother's return from France? I am sorry to find it was a melancholy event.
Oh, it is beyond anything you can conceive. His horse fell ill. Wait, no. I believe it was an accident. However, it was something or other, or else it was something else. So Edward set off directly to England without packing another coat. I'm quite angry with him about it. It was so shocking.
Why, indeed, it seems to be a shocking affair from beginning to end.
Oh, it is beyond anything you can believe. I would have rather had anything happen than that Edward would have lost that horse.
Except his coming away without another coat?
Oh, that has vexed me more than you can imagine. You cannot think how fondly I am of Edward.
By the by,
Are you not in love with him yourself?
to be sure I am. I am in love with every handsome man I see.
Oh, am I? I am in love with every handsome man in the world.
There you outdo me, for I am only in love with those that I see.
Come along, then. Everyone is waiting for you to dance.
Me? Her?
Is Edward dancing with your cousin?
They are beginning the dance. He says that everyone expected her to, but you know he only consults his own inclinations. I would not have minded it were it anybody else's daughter, but to see her pretend to be above me when her father was only a tradesman is just too bad.
Let's not call him a tradesman, dear. Her father was a merchant. Still, that hardly puts her above many of the young ladies here. Who does she think she is?
It is an affront to the whole family. It is so provoking to see Edward let her stand there. Oh, I wish he had never come home to England. I hope that she may fall and break her neck or sprain her ankle.
Miss Stanley, is your brother close with Miss Percival?
Oh no. In fact, he's very fond of Mrs. Percival.
Mrs. Percival? Miss Percival's aunt? Oh, she's your parents' age.
Oh, yes, but he hardly ever leaves her side. In fact, if she would dance, I dare say he would be dancing with her right now.
A woman with a house of her own. Clever boy.
That'll teach him.
What are you talking of, dear?
Well, I must say this. I've never been to a stupider ball in my life. I wish there were no such things.
Well, Miss Stanley, I'm sorry you have not been amused. Everything was meant for the best, I'm sure.
Oh, my dear Mrs. Percival, you must not believe everything that my lively Camilla says.
To be sure, though, it is quite unpleasant to see someone behave so rude and shocking. I'm certain I'm not offended. And I would not mind if the whole world were to stand above me were it not so unpleasant.
My deepest apologies. I did not mean to take anybody's place, and I should not have done it if I did not think that everyone else wished it. Do you know I would never willingly insult you and your family? I have too much sense than to be overproud of my own.
Huh.
Oh, Catherine. How sweet, my dear.
Well, it is high time we all got home to bed.
Well, as glad as I am to see you, son, I trust you will be returning to France soon. After all, your youth is your best opportunity of making the grand tour of Europe.
Oh, I would much rather travel along with you, Father. Travel abroad can be such a tiresome thing, and I can always get to it whenever. In any case, we can speak of this later.
Ah, cousin, I must inform you. It is a rule with me never to admit any young man into my house as a visitor for any length of time. Girls nowadays always give a handsome young man a preference before any other, although why I could never discover. There's nothing like virtue for making us what we ought to be.
Well, I certainly would not wish my son to be cause for alarm.
But Catherine's behavior is scandalous. She has been known to sit and laugh and whisper with a young man whom she has not seen above half a dozen times. Therefore, I beg you to send your son away immediately. We shall all be at 6s and 7s.
Well, I assure you, it is not the plan for him to continue with us for more than a day. He is planning to return to France.
Well, very good.
Ah. What?
I couldn't help but overhearing you, Father. I can scarcely believe my ears. Is she really so upset after all of this?
Well, if you've overheard, then you must understand how imperative it is you depart tomorrow. After all, my word is already engaged for it.
To think, all I have to do is dance with her niece. Set her all at 6s and 7s. Imagine if I were to spend the entire day at my cousin's side. That would drive her truly mad.
It's from his mother's side of the family.
Are you sketching a portrait of my sister or of her gown?
The gown is the occasion for her, but for me it is an occasion to have somebody new to draw. People are so much more interesting than flowers.
I imagine I would rather like your drawings of flowers. You have an eye for detail. See here. You think I'm joking? Not at all.
Well, cousin, I I hear you are anxious to return to France. What time do you mean to set out?
Well, if you're lucky, ma'am, 12 o'clock perhaps. Though I dare say, you leaving the hour of my departure to my own disposal may be a mistake, should I desire to stay longer.
Well, there has been a shocking alteration in the behavior of young men since my time.
I do not know that young men at any time have been universally well behaved.
Universally well behaved. That would not make history very interesting.
Not very interesting to read, perhaps, but far more pleasant at the time. Think how much happier Edward V would be if he had not been murdered by his uncle, Richard III.
Oh, do you really believe that Richard III murdered his nephews?
You've stopped drawing. What are you talking of?
History?
Let me take this from you. In fact, may I keep this? I rather like it.
Your sister may want it. Besides, it is not finished.
I still like it.
What do you mean about Richard III? Most historians agree he killed his nephews. He was quite as bad as Queen Elizabeth, murdering his own family because they were rivals for the throne.
Many people think that the murders happened just as it was written in Shakespeare's play, but I think that you're overlooking the fact that Queen Elizabeth herself was ruling during Shakespeare's time. After all, Elizabeth's own grandfather was the one who killed Richard to take the throne. Shakespeare couldn't have made Richard the hero if he had wanted him to be.
Never mind Shakespeare. What about the historians? We cannot simply suppose Richard was respectable because he was a York and he was killed by a Tudor. We must admit it's very suspicious that his nephews disappeared while under his care.
Upon my very honor, you are mistaken.
Well, profligate as I knew you to be, I was not prepared for such a sight. I never wanted you to play upon the harpsichord or draw better than anyone else, but I had hoped that you would be willing and able to provide an example of modesty to the young people hereabouts. I gave you Blair's sermons and Caleb's In Search of a Wife. I gave you the key to my own library, and I borrowed a great number of good books from our neighbors, besides all for this point. I see I might as well have saved myself the trouble. Well, I am glad to see that you have some shame for what you have done. But I plainly see that everything is going to sixes and sevens, and all order will soon be at an end throughout the kingdom.
Upon my honor, ma'am, I've done nothing this evening that can contribute to overthrow the establishment of the kingdom.
There you are mistaken, child. The welfare of every nation depends upon the virtue of its individuals. You've been giving a bad example to the world.
Mr. Stanley's behavior has surprised me as much as it has done you. And I can only suppose it the effect of his high spirits. But do you not consider that it is growing very late? Perhaps you had better return to the house.
What could I have been thinking? Being so forgetful to sit down out of doors at this time of night. I probably already have caught a dreadful cold and will be laid up all winter with it. Let me see. It is July. Cold weather will be setting in soon. I shall likely not be tolerable again until May. Who knows, but I may never recover. My particular friend, Miss Sarah Hutchinson, died after sitting outside in the rain one evening in April. This bower will be the death of me. I must and I will have it pulled down.
No, ma'am, please. I am sure it is not yet late enough to catch cold.
I hope I know enough of ill health than to be convinced on such a point by a girl who has always been perfectly well.
So, Was your aunt full of apprehensions? Did she predict a terrible scandal? Oh, do tell me all about it.
He will not stop talking about it.
Did you mean to alarm my aunt?
Of course. She's just too easy to alarm.
Have you only been talking to me to annoy her?
No, I quite like talking to you just as much when your aunt wasn't around. And I enjoy talking about history with you.
Not this again! You are my brother and you have been ignoring me all day!
Good night. So, he really is in love, after all? I shall have to study his character further and watch his behavior more tomorrow. The others downstairs already?
Yes, all but Mr. Edward Stanley, ma'am.
Mr. Edward Stanley? When did he go?
He left this morning around 8.
Are you sure?
Saw it with my own eyes.
He is gone, without a thought for me. Well, that will teach me in future to think that everybody is in love with me. Yet still, I would have liked to have seen him before he went. Was I not up at 8 o'clock? But he seemed rather indifferent about it. That is just like a young man. Unaccountable beings. And young women are as ridiculous. Soon I shall start to think like my aunt and be saying that everything is going to 6s and 7s. Do come in.
How can Edward be so horrid as to leave at that shocking hour in the morning?
Did you see him this morning?
Oh, yes, but I was so sleepy that I could barely keep my eyes open. Edward said to me, "Camilla, goodbye. I am going away now. I dare not see Catharine, or else I trust I will not get away."
Nonsense. You did not say that. Or he was in joking, he did.
Oh, no. He was too out of spirits, the joke. He begged me to give his love for you. You have no idea what fine things he said about you. He's in love with you, I am certain of it.
How can you be so ridiculous? But did he really wish his love to me then?
Oh, yes, he did. But I must go now, see your aunt's plants. There is one I quite dote upon, and 2 or 3 more besides.
He could not trust himself with me. Charming young man, how you must have suffered.
Ah, Mrs. Dudley, it is a delight as always.
Back so soon?
Yes, you see, my carriage got a bit stuck in the mud. I wonder if you could send a servant round to come help me with it.
I'd expected you to remain longer, Mr. Stanley. Your sister tells me you're very fond of Mrs. Percival.
I'm quite fond of everyone, ma'am.
Lacking shrewdness. The Percivals may not be an old family, but her fortune is good, and her establishment ample.
I don't suppose you're suggesting I'm pursuing a mercenary marriage with Mrs. Stanley. I'm in my prime. I'm at the height of my powers, my manners, my person.
I'm not suggesting anything. Your sister suggested it.
Oh, really? I must be going.
Where are you going?
I have a long walk ahead of me. Dudley, that I am pursuing Mrs. Percival.
You, like Catherine said about me at the dance. And you're always saying such nice things about her, though I can never persuade you to say nice things about me, though I sometimes beg you for an hour together.
Are you really upset about such trifles? You told Mrs. Dudley that I am pursuing a woman twice my age.
How can you be so horrid?
Have patience with your sister.
She lied to Mrs. Dudley and made a fool out of me.
You lied to my aunt and made a fool out of me.
Made a fool of you? You're not so easily made a fool of.
I thought you were sincere. You did not tell me your scheme.
Well, I didn't think you would help me play the trick.
No, I would not. I do not like deceiving others any more than I like being deceived.
Well, I suppose I owe you an apology then.
And I accept it.
You know, wasn't all deception.
I should have been guided by my aunt, and I like your sincerity more than your play acting.
Well, I suppose I ought to apologize to my sister and to your aunt. And then I really should get back to France. But do you think after the grand tour I might see you again?
I will find a way to win over my aunt. At least my bower still retains an interest in my emotions. Perhaps that is because of the unique remembrance it brings to mind of Edward Stanley.
So some of us have to scooch off to do the pub crawl preparations, but the rest of us could come back on. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. If you have questions.